How do you keep rabbits in isolation? Well, today I'm going to talk to you about our rabbits. G'day there, I'm Dana from Pewakaka Valley Homestead, and we currently, got dark. There we go. We currently have 5 rabbits in isolation, and I'm going to talk to you about why that is and how to do it on your farm safely. I'm just going to have a wee sit down in the hay shed, which honestly has almost run out of hay. We had to go and buy some straw because hay season's not quite here yet. I contacted a lady about getting some rabbits from her, and then she messaged me back not long after saying, actually, we have got RCD, which is the rabbit calicivirus. This is the version 2, which is the super horrible one that has been released in our country, I think, for a couple of years now. But she had it ripping through her rabbitry and it was killing everything. And eventually she had these 5 rabbits left that were actually vaccinated with a really specific vaccine, and they seemed to be doing okay. And so she sort of said, well, do you want them? But it's okay if you don't want them, because I understand you probably don't want the virus on your property, but they do seem fine. Now, ordinarily, if I didn't know what I knew about isolation and diseases and disease carrying and all that sort of stuff, I would have just said no. But I am a nurse. I have worked in isolation wards and things before, and I thought, you know what, I think I can do this for these people. So I said yes, and I've taken on these 5 rabbits that have come from a place with confirmed RCD type 2, which seems like it would be a dangerous bad thing to take on, and it would be if I didn't know what I was doing. But so far so good. They've been here for 2 weeks now, and they're fine, they're alive. RCD is quite tenacious. It can live on feed and straw and hay for up to 3 months. If it's been cold, it can live on it for 5 months. It can live on other surfaces for up to 3.5 months. And it can live on the outside of the rabbits, even though rabbits are asymptomatic. Usually after exposure, between 3 and 9 days is when a rabbit will contract it or start showing symptoms, and they will be dead usually within 24 hours. So thankfully this is stayed within this shed. Unfortunately for the lady, she lost, I don't even know how many rabbits. It was a lot of rabbits, thousands of dollars worth of rabbits to this horrible disease. But these ones are vaccinated. We have plans to get the rest of our breeding rabbits vaccinated in the next few weeks. We have to wait until everything's up and running again because of the Christmas New Year shutdown and stuff. So I'm hoping to book them in for next week to get them done. But in the meantime, these guys are staying in complete and utter isolation. And I'm the only person going in there. And I'll show you the protocols that I've got in place for keeping these rabbits in isolation. There are other reasons you might want to keep rabbits or other animals isolated. Or quarantine, of course, is the other name. So if you've got new stock, it's a really good idea to quarantine animals for at least 2 weeks, preferably a whole month, just to make sure that animals are fine and they're not carrying any nasties that are going to get passed on to your existing stock. So whilst this is about rabbits, it can apply to pretty much any animal, particularly smaller animals that you can keep in cages. So these guys are actually living in our brooder boxes, which is why I've got nothing in the incubator at the moment, because my brooder boxes are taken up. So I have plans to build some proper cages for these guys, which hopefully I'll get started this week, but with the weather the way it's been, who knows. But we've had to keep them all separate so that we know, in case any of them died or whatever, that we could keep them separated. So they're completely separate from each other. They're completely separate. They're in a totally different environment to the rest of our rabbits. A totally different building. I wear different shoes, different clothes. I wear gloves, and I've got hand gel to clean my hands as well. I'm not bringing in there any water containers, any food containers. I'm filling them up at the door before I go in there. So I've got a bucket in there already that has got some pellets in it. So when it gets low, I bring a separate pellet while I'm still clean, bring that down, fill them up at the pellet bucket bin, and bring it down and tip it in without touching the bucket that's already there. And the same with the water. When I know the water container is getting empty, I leave it near the door, so when I come in the next morning, I can bring one of the bigger water containers and fill it up without touching it. And so those water containers and the feed containers are not leaving that shed, and the new ones coming in aren't actually going in the shed. They're just sort of, well, they're not sitting on the floor in the shed, they go in the air in the shed, but only for a very short time. So I will go in and I will show you what I'm doing in there, and then but I won't touch anything, and then I'll take you back out, and then I will glove up and go back in there and actually feed everybody. So as long as we're not touching anything in there, we'll be fine. So this is our brooder house. Oh, I was going to pick some grass for them though, so we might just do that. Look at this. This stuff is as tall as I am. So we might just pick. Right, we got us some grass. Oh, and some water all over the screen. That sort of worked. Hopefully it dries off. The wonders of technology. Right, so now I have wet grass tucked in under my arm because I've got no other hands. And you can see in here, yes, it is a bit wet and gross because the rain has got in, which is helpful. So these are my old shoes, and I just leave them here at the door. So I'm not wearing my gumboots in here, I'm just wearing these shoes in here, which means they're really muddy and gross because I've been stomping through the chicken house with them. So I don't want to put you down, so because of that I won't be gloving up, but I also won't be touching anything other than my shoes. So here is the feed bin and the water bucket, the water bottle, and a mess. I'm sorry, the floor's gross. It is what it is. I can't take anything out of here until we know we're clear of germs. This pile of stuff here is just the bird netting that we used to have strung up across here, the same as what we've got here to keep the chickens in. So these are some chickens that are hanging out in the brooder house. They're going to stay in here until we know we're clear as well. And I have plans to put some rabbit cages along that back wall in here as well. Rabbits and chickens actually go quite well together in that sort of setup where the manure can drop down, the chickens scratch it through. It greatly reduces the stink. So this is one of our little girls. She was a baby, but she has been vaccinated. Her name is Rosie. And she's quite sweet. She's enjoying that grass there. And this is Roger Rabbit. He's our buck. And then this little lassie is called Ruby. And Ruby and Rosie are about the same age. So I think I might keep one of those two. I don't want to keep all of these girls. This is Marigold. She's got quite a lot of spunk. As soon as I open the roof of her cage, she runs off that way. And this is Miss Daisy. She's really laid back. She's a really good mum. So I'm hoping to breed her. Now, as I have said, I know these cages aren't ideal for them. They actually have, they're probably at least half as long again as sort of what's considered a commercial cage size. So they have got plenty of room in there. It's just not as tall as I would like their cages to be. These are only just over a foot tall, and I'd prefer them to be at least half that again for them. But that's alright. It's just for a little holiday while they're in here. Consider it a trip to the intensive care or something. So they're just hanging out in here until we know that they're well, and I've built these bigger cages for them. Protocols for looking after things in isolation. You always want to look after the sickest thing last. You want to make sure that you're wearing gloves and preferably an outer coating of clothing that you're not wearing anywhere else, that you leave in here. I don't have a spare jacket. If I did, I would do that. So when I come in, I put my shoes on, and the first thing I do is actually go and tend to the chickens because they're not sick at all. So I put my gloves on, go through, feed the chickens, and water the chickens, do everything I need to do in there. And then I come out here, and our highest risk rabbit is Marigold over in that corner because she was in a cage next door to one of the ones that she did lose. What's more, the one she did lose then was also vaccinated with the same thing these guys are vaccinated. So she was considered my highest risk. So she's in the furthest away cage. And this little lassie, she just lucked out and got the big space at the bottom because that's what we had. So I feed her, and then I go along and I feed each of these. And you always wash your hands in between each of them just to make sure that you're not contaminating, sharing stuff through. I'm really careful to stand there, bowls up in there, and use the other hand to pour the water and the food in, so that I'm not actually putting the food bucket into their house and then into the next house. It's really, really important just to keep them all separate and just be really aware of every time you touch something, you could be contaminating something to pass on to the next one. And once I've finished feeding everybody in here, cleaning them out, doing whatever I'm doing, I use the hand gel, give it a good rub all over my hands after I take my gloves off, of course. And then I go straight up to the house and I have a shower and I change my clothes, and the clothes I was wearing go straight in the wash. I just want no risk of anything I'm wearing or anything I'm touching coming into contact with what the children are wearing down into the main rabbit house. The other thing you want to do is make sure you're keeping really good tabs on how many days these guys have been in isolation as well. I forgot to write down the date of when I put them in here, so I couldn't remember if it had been 7 days or 10 days, so I had to go back through the chat that I'd done with the lady and worked out what day it was. Of course, being holidays, all the days kind of blend into one anyway. Had to work out what day it was that I went to see her, and then count forward and work out how many days they'd actually been in. So they have been in here for over 2 weeks. It was 2 weeks. Today's Wednesday. It was 2 weeks yesterday. So I know that they are probably clear and fine. It's been well over the 9 days that this particular virus can be around for. However, they can shed it for up to a month and a half. So I'm going to keep them quite separate from the other rabbits for quite some time. And wait until I get the other rabbits vaccinated properly. They are vaccinated, but just not with the same vaccine that these guys are vaccinated with, which is obviously the one that has been effective against this virus, because she had other rabbits that were vaccinated, but with a different vaccine that still passed away. So that's where I'm at with these rabbits. Traditionally, I'm known as the rabbits and colonies lady. A lot of people know me for all my information on keeping rabbits and colonies, and I do still think that's a really, really good idea. However, what we're going to be doing with these rabbits is keeping a breeding program where I'm keeping 2 separate lines, 2 separate strains of rabbits so that I can sell and also keep, but sell breeding trios and breeding pairs that I know that aren't related. So for me, having cages will be a much more effective way of doing that. Our grow outs will still have a colony setting where they get to run and play with each other. And the things I'm going to do with the cages to make sure that they're as social as possible, I'm only going to use wire dividers so they can snuggle up against each other. They just can't get through. And the mums will stay in with the babies. They'll have like a mini colony, I guess is how you could describe it, of their own space. And I'm making their cages much bigger than the standard American. I think it's usually 24 by 30 inches, which for those who don't speak inch is about 60 centimetres by 90 centimetres. So I'm going to make ours 1.2 and at least 60 deep. So they're going to be quite a bit bigger, and also make sure they've got plenty of space so they can stand up as well. So I still firmly believe that colony raising rabbits is a really good option, especially if you're just growing them at home for yourself. I think if you're trying to maintain a breeding program and you've only got one colony space, it would be much easier to keep a few in cages, even utilising the wall space to hang a few cages up there. Obviously cages need protected from the wind and the rain and all that sort of stuff, but we've got ours in a shed. We found that because of the RCD thing, we've found that the best way of keeping flies away. Flies also can be vectors for RCD, so you need a way of keeping the flies out. So for us, the best way of doing that is to keep the rabbits in a shed. I have got a few videos, like a whole playlist on keeping rabbits in colonies, so I will put it up there or up there. I can never remember where it goes because it's opposite to what I think it is. I think it's up there. I'll put the list up there anyway, that you can watch those videos at your own leisure. Sorry, it's me explaining my mess again. I feel very embarrassed about my messy house. These boxes are the ones that the rabbits came in, and they've got their names on them. Partly I've left them because I haven't recorded. It's also got a bit of their heritage on them as well, so I haven't recorded that yet. But also I wanted to leave them in here in case a rabbit passed away. I could put it in a box and stick it straight in the incinerator and I would know that it was safe, because the outside of these boxes haven't been touched by germy hands, and they've only had the sick rabbits in them. So that's why this is still a mess. Right, I'm going to stick you guys outside. I'm going to glove up and I'm going to get these guys fed. I hope you found this video on keeping animals in isolation helpful. If you have, hit the like button, and I will see you in the next video.